welcome to the Mind Chimp podcast. Hey Jack, welcome to the Mind Chimp podcast. How are we doing?
I'm doing well, Danny. How are you, mate?
I'm wonderfully well, my friend. Wonderfully well. Let me set the scene for you. So I've kind of got a new mic and stuff, and I've decorated my office. However, there's an echo in my room. So I've had to buy a unit, take the drawers out of this unit, put this unit where my mic is, and put a quilt over it all just to kind of kill the echo. So if you want to talk about bootstrapping and doing kind of, being innovative, there you go, my friend, there you go. But anyway, this isn't about me and my office.
Like a den.
Exactly, yeah. It takes me back to being a kid, right? Exactly. This is about you though, Jack, not about me and my office and my echo. So, Jack, usually I ask my guests to kind of summarise themselves with their log line. Can you remember what yours was?
Yeah, so when you got me to do this, the first thing I had to do was Google what's a log line. So that sent me down a bit of a learning route anyway. So look, mine was a person with a passion for people and performance and trying to avoid all the well-laid traps and pitfalls of this sort of confused and comfortable industry.
Okay. I'm sure we'll get into that in just a second. But before we do, two more questions. One, I need you to pick 4 numbers for me, please, from 1 to 100.
Okay. 6.
Yep.
26.
Yep.
29.
Okay.
87.
Perfect. We will come back to them a little bit later on down the line. So, before we get into kind of Jack and where Jack's at right now, when you was in school, Jack, and a teacher would say, Jack, what is it you want to be when you grow older? I keep saying old rather than older, but what is it when you grow older? What is it you would say to that teacher?
So I had this really weird hybrid of wanting to be a footballer for Coventry City. So I'd obviously set my hopes really high to begin with already, and a chef. And I think I wanted to do them both at the same time, which might be why I've achieved neither of them. But yeah, my godfather was a chef, and I think I had a thing for that from an early age. So yeah, a weird hybrid of footballer chef.
Maybe there's still a future for that. We just haven't seen it yet. So there you go. Maybe we've just laid out your best plan.
Sunday League footballer chef, maybe, but that's about it.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so kind of let's jump into who you are. So I guess we know who we are through the group, community, and whatever else. But maybe from a guest who don't know who you are, maybe you could give us a bit of a whistle-stop tour and kind of tell us about where you've come from and probably in your career just now, but where you come from to kind of where you are right now.
Yeah, of course. So look, Jack Lockhart, I'm currently a learning consultant with Virgin Media. So I've been there since January 2018. Before that, I'd spent 5 years working for the Training Foundation, or TAP as people might know it, but in a sales capacity, or kind of like sort of hybrid sales, marketing, sort of a bit of everything capacity. And before that, sort of 9-10 months in recruitment. So that's been my career coming out of university, which came with a history and politics degree. So obviously I've ended up where I am now. But my journey's been a bit different to people. I know we'll probably explore that a little bit through this session. But a lot of people fall into L&D, where I maybe sort of actively chose to do it, and there's a few reasons for that. So yeah, that's my whistle-stop tour so far. That I'm sure there are a lot more stops to go in the future, though.
Yeah, definitely, I would agree on that. So maybe kind of break down your tagline for me and kind of why you went with that one. Yeah,
so that passion for people and performance came from a time when it's coming up nearly on 5 years since I had the surgery for it, but I ruptured my cruciate ligament, and at a time probably wasn't in such a good space mentally and self-confidence and so on, and it became a bit of a journey on the back of that, through some of the treatment that I had that got me into personal development. And then it's that second part around those sort of well-laid traps, those pitfalls of this industry, and we spend a lot of time maybe moaning about what the industry is like, or all these things that are wrong with it. And I challenge and debate sometimes what people are doing to stand up and make a change of it, or what they're doing to allow themselves to get caught in it. So I'm trying to weave this career while trying to avoid all the things that people have got caught up in before. So yeah, sometimes it's running around bear traps. But look, it's absolutely worth it. Absolutely worth it.
Okay, so how did you manage to do your kind of your ligament?
Trying to chase being a footballer for Coventry City. Probably no. Look, it was a Sunday league football game. Foot got caught in the ground. Someone's charged in. No one's meant to cause anyone any harm, and it's just happened. So yeah, ruptured cruciate ligament. Supposed to be a nice, easy surgery back in 4 weeks, and it took about sort of 4.5 months actually, with complications that happened on the back of it, and treatment that happened on the back of it, and that sort of set me down a bit of a challenging route mentally and physically. So it really came from there. That's where a lot of that came from.
All right, okay. So I kind of snapped both my ACLs in my knees, so I can kind of semi-feel your pain in a way.
Yeah.
But you kind of talk about, actually, before we actually do that, can you remember what the weather was like on that day?
Yeah, I can. So it was March. It was like the 21st or 22nd. It was actually quite a nice day. A bit of a breeze. I can remember exactly where it was. I can remember exactly what goal it was in. I can remember who we were playing. I can remember it was a quarter-final of a cup. I remember trying to come back on because we'd run out of substitutes and I could run in a straight line. Went to turn after 10 yards and just hit the deck, and that's when I knew that something just wasn't right there. I thought it was a dead leg, first of all. So yeah, I remember lots about it. I remember the emotions more than anything, and that's obviously where we get a lot of our memories from anyway.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of why I asked that question. It's interesting, right? You know, if you didn't do your cruciate ligament, that would have just been like any other average kind of day. And this is kind of the things where I'm talking about when I talk about experience design and kind of actually your experiences shape, good experiences or bad experiences shape memory, and memory requires recall and whatnot. So it's really interesting. I just wanted to see if you could actually remember the kind of, the weather and the day. So kind of talk about this kind of the mental well-being and stuff, as I know that's kind of important to you personally. But yeah, maybe talk about kind of that as a challenge and kind of, I mean, you know, be as detailed or as light as you want on this.
Yeah, so the first time I realised that maybe my mind wasn't where I wanted it to be was when my behaviours and the way I spoke became quite clinical. And that was, and when I say clinical, I mean terminology short, fast, and so on. And that was because I was spending sort of every day or every other day going back to a hospital, dressings changed, checking infection levels, whatever it might be. And that was because I'd had to be sat on a settee for sort of about 2.5 months when this thing wasn't healing. And it was at that point that I did what we're trying to encourage a lot of people to do now, and sort of turn around to my mum and dad, said, I'm not okay. And I think I need to go and have a conversation with someone. So went to my GP. The GP knows that when I book in or any of my family book in, it ain't because we've got a cold. So he said, look, you're a young, healthy lad. I could prescribe you things. I think there's something else that we can do. So I'm gonna prescribe you something called CBT. And I'm thinking, well, that sounds like a tablet to me. So then, got a referral and ended up sitting with a lady who described to me what the CBT was, and it was cognitive behavioural therapy, and it was about how you change your thoughts, or how you recognise your thoughts and what you can do with them. Then that was the first time that I'd realised that maybe I had control over what I was thinking at any one time, and I was, at the time sort of a usual 22-year-old lad out most weekends, drinking this, that, and the other, and having this personal persona and a professional persona, and I realised it just wasn't particularly healthy for me. So that CBT had a couple of sessions. That was my first real recognition of what development can do for you and how powerful development is for people. And it's always been a challenge. That sort of anxiety is always sat there at times. It's triggered by other things. And where it was sort of most recently triggered was when I went into this new role last year. I took a leap out of sales into learning and development into a more senior L&D role, and imposter syndrome sort of came knocking. So it wasn't until March this year that I just said, it can take a hike, actually, and there's no such thing for me as imposter syndrome, and I'm going to act as if I don't have that kind of thing. So yeah, it's one of these things that I think is constantly there. It's quite a neutral term. You're your mental health. It can be in a good state, a poor state, or sort of a neutral state. And that was it for me. That was that turning point. And I look back on it now and realise that introduction to CBT, without that introduction to CBT and cognitive behavioural therapy, I probably wouldn't be having this conversation with you now. I probably wouldn't have wanted to get into L&D. I probably wouldn't have gone on to do mentoring with the Prince's Trust or things like that, where I wanted to help other people and develop other people.
So kind of, obviously you kind of dumped into how important it is with you and stuff, but and you talked about kind of your role, which I kind of will get into in just a sec, but kind of how are you, so obviously we know it's important, definitely, but how are you bringing this into your, maybe it's into your company's culture, and actually how are you, and maybe you're not, maybe you're not, maybe you are, but kind of how are you making this more to light? It's really interesting that you talk about kind of, it's okay to say I need to talk. So how are you making that more, bringing that more to life in maybe in your day to day and then in your company's kind of culture? Yeah,
so look, company culture wise, we're probably seeing a lot of the same things as other businesses. Mental health is becoming more of a challenge for everyone, and absence is coming off the back of it. And where my challenge is, I'm trying to work out, is that necessarily a bad thing, or is it now because we're recognising it more and we have to sort of expect that there's a spike coming from it? So we have a lot of programs that support that, manager support and so on. Where I'm bringing it to my day to day is that I recognise when I was struggling, I still used to say I was okay. Yeah, I'm fine. Yeah, I'm great. I'm doing this, that, and the other. And when I hear that off of the people, I sort of don't take that as the answer anymore, Danny, to be honest. If people say, oh, yeah, I'm okay, I say, oh, what's okay about it then? Because okay is a bit sort of in the middle. What's okay about it? How are you doing? Yeah, I'm good. Oh, really? Well, what's just good about it? Because good's a bit of a sort of an in the middle word. What specifically is good about it? And it's opening up that initial conversation after that good, fine, okay, or that, that B word, the busy word, we all sort of seem to use now. We're all sort of busy. Okay, I'm busy. Well, great. Well, tell me what you're busy with, because it's going to be different to what I'm busy with. And you can begin to open up conversations and just have a sort of a richer, that sort of second level conversation. First level is okay, fine, busy, or whatever. That second level is actually really what's going on for you, what's specifically going on. So that's what I try and bring to my day to day. Don't get it perfect. There are times when I will just say, I'm okay, fine, good, and then realise afterwards, actually, that was probably an opportunity to open up a bit of a conversation with people. So
I guess kind of talking about, your culture and stuff, maybe you could share to us, Jack, a little bit about what actually a day looks like in the life of Jack, and maybe, it can be personal, professional, the questions all apply to that. Some will be kind of, sometimes throughout this you'll probably get bounced by lots of questions, that's kind of what I want, but what does a day look like in Jack's life? So
from a personal perspective, and this is where people go, Jesus, do you really do that? My alarm probably goes off around 5 o'clock in the morning. And that's just because that's my time to get up and do me. So you'll often just find me sat in the front room, or if I'm in a hotel traveling, just reading. So last year, as I sort of published, I got through 53 books last year. And that was because university battered the enjoyment of reading out for me. Here's a list of things you must read, and here's what you must cover. Like, no, I don't enjoy this anymore. So sort of last year was my getting back into reading. So that's what you find me doing, or personal development, or courses, or whatever it might be. That is my time. What does a normal day look in work? I'd love to know what a normal day looks like, Danny. To be honest, it's 4 hats though. So it could be a mixture of delivery. So delivering a curriculum of courses that we have within Virgin Media, very much around sort of personal development skills, management skills. That's the area where I focus in. There's an element of consultancy, so consulting with parts of the different parts of the business, what problems they might have, or perceived problems. So we can probably talk a bit about that. An element of digital, so we have an internal platform that we've sort of built instead of bought in as well. So building pages on that, building sort of web and digital pages in that, so people can access it across the company. And then a sort of a design and development element to it as well. So a curriculum that we create, but also projects that we might be working on. So any week I'm sort of wearing one or multiple or all of those 4 hats in some form of order in some part of the country. So as we speak, I'm in Belfast. No, I'm not. I'm in Limerick. I was in Belfast yesterday. That's it. I've been on a train. I took this Belfast to Limerick gig thinking there was a flight between Belfast and Shannon. There wasn't. It's a train or drive. So yeah, these are all the things you'll find me wearing those 4 hats at some point, at some place across the UK and Ireland. That's as best as I can describe it.
Fair enough, fair enough. So it's interesting that you've kind of gone with building your own platform rather than kind of bringing one in. So obviously be mindful of what you can and what you can't share. But
Of course, yeah.
what kind of made the business go towards that? And yeah, what does that look like now? And actually, kind of what benefit is it bringing to your users and to you as maybe a designer or whatever, or your designers?
Yeah, so it's we've got the LMS that's in there. Obviously, we have that for tracking, compliance, modules, etc. And then we've got this other platform that we've got that just houses a lot of 24/7 available digital content. So some stuff that we have built internally, maybe some off the shelf items from other people. And the idea is that actually in the past everything was quite in pockets across the business, maybe depending on where you were in the business and so on. The idea was to create this central repository, central platform where people could come and interact and then find their way to the LMS if they needed to book onto things. The reason to build it in-house, I'd have to go back. So it sort of existed before I came, but I think it was very much around the flexibility. We're lucky enough to have sort of a multimedia team that sit in-house with web designers in there, app developers and so on. So yeah, I think the idea was taken that we could have a bit more flexibility building that ourselves, and we have the skills in-house to do it. So yeah, lucky in that respect.
Awesome. So have you kind of, obviously, I'm just trying to think kind of how has it been felt and how has it been seen by your users, your people? Have you had any kind of feedback to say, actually this is exactly what we want, or is it kind of just gone off a gut feeling, or?
Yeah, a bit of everything. And this is where I get to sort of come in as the fresh face last year and begin to question how we do things, why we do things, how can we do things differently. So like any company, you'll find the people that have never heard of it. You'll find the people that will always go to it. You'll find the people that sit in the middle, and you have to have all of those kind of people for it to happen. I think personally, like anything, as we talk about the other skills we should need now as L&D professionals, all that toolkit, and it's very much about communicating. So, people have got the ability, it's an icon on their desktop that they can click. Some of them just have never clicked or don't know why it's there. It sits alongside other things. So for me, it's very much about, what the platform is really useful. How do we communicate? How do we buy people in to want to use it, not to have to use it? So I think, a lot of where my focus wants to be, and hopefully second half of this year, is how we encourage people to come to that, how we check if people are, what are the things we want to measure that sit in the background of that? How do we leverage things like Google Analytics to really show why people are coming, where they're coming from, how long they're spending, why they're spending? Is that how long we want them to spend on pages and so on? So that for me is where I think we've got a great opportunity to look at it, and it just so happens to be the kind of stuff that I really want to get into as well. So yeah, two things that seem to be coming together.
Oh, cool. So it's interesting, kind of. And some of these questions, like I say, Jack, take them as personal, professional, but it's interesting to hear kind of the fact that you went from a leap from kind of sales into to where you are now. And actually, it was interesting. One of the things which I think about is when we go for these interviews, we have to go in and sell our best self and kind of, yes, I did this and I did that. And I think actually the better question we should be asking is kind of, what does your failure CV look like? If I was to ask you to map out your failure CV, what would that look like? We'd learn more from failures than we do from success. So if I was to say to you, Jack, what does your failure resume look like? And actually, what's the biggest failure? What jumps out for you professionally?
Oh, it's that's good. So the biggest one that I ever classed as a perceived failure was when I got made redundant from my first job in recruitment. So it was a change. The business was changing. I just happened to be it's last in first out is one way that they do it, by 2 days, as it so happened. But that for me came as like one of those big failures, and it had a massive knock on how I then went on to get into sales. And I think what that actually did for me was I became sort of this non-typical sales, but I probably wouldn't class myself as those sort of classic skills you'd have for sales. But what it ended up teaching me was that sort of inquisitiveness around working with people. Other big fails, oh crikey, I took the entire website down for the training foundation once, but I just put in the wrong bit of HTML in because I thought I could do HTML because I'd done MySpace before and you could do all those things on MySpace. I think I just put one letter in the wrong place and took the entire thing down. So that was an interesting one for a couple of hours. That definitely took me away from the sales side of things. Another big fail, and one of the ones that really helped me develop my craft as sort of a consultant or as from the sales side, was I went into a meeting completely unprepared. I built up this bravado about I can just go into a meeting, I can just, know the questions, they'll come off the bat. And it was just a flat out abject failure. Like in the end, the person at the end sort of said, can I give you some feedback on what you've done there? I can sort of see that it wasn't what you wanted to do. So I was getting feedback off a potential client at this time, a bit of coaching around what I could do differently next time. It just very much came around preparation. So from then, I've always had at least a framework or something of a conversation I want to get. Very rare you'll find me not have at least 2 or 3 questions jotted down, even if I've got 5 minutes notice before going into somewhere. So yeah, some big failures that have then made me rethink how I do things. I've got a lot of failures to go as well. That's the best part about it.
Yeah, 100%. Like, I think having these mini experiments and these things where you build them up to see if you fail, to see if it's success. We can talk about actually, what's the outcome? But actually, the first biggest outcome is actually making it into a success. And actually, one of the other great outcomes is it being a failure. It's like it's a win-win, I think, for me. And personally, I don't see it as a win-win instantly. That'd be a lie if I say I do. But sometimes you can sit down, a day or so, and go, actually, while it didn't provide the kind of the perceived success, actually, like you say, what's the stuff what I can take from it? And maybe it is a feedback. Maybe it is like you mentioned, one of the potential stakeholders giving you that feedback and kind of, it's interesting, that bit of conversation, that feedback, that'll help shape your future successes and your future failures as well. So it's always a good thing. So the flip side of this failure CV, what's your biggest success in the last 12 months?
So one of my biggest successes in the last 12 months, apart from landing this job, because we can talk about how ridiculous trying to get recruited into this industry is, because that's a whole other thing, and it was subject to my first talk at the first Mind Chimp event. But it was this. It was becoming the LPI sponsored professional last year, and the reason is I didn't have the confidence to go. I'd just taken a new job. I was just trying to get by day to day, and it was that sort of day before that I got the nudge from my governor saying, "Did you end up applying for that thing?" And I think it was when I ended up getting the feedback, it was very much around the passion you brought to it. You haven't got the experience, we don't expect to have it, but you've got this sort of level of passion that we want to try and nurture and try and get out for you sort of in the next 12 months. So for me, that was a massive success, because it was that recognition that, we can see that you don't have the entire toolkit, and that's okay. That's great. You've got something that we can mold. I don't think we do enough of that when we're recruiting into this industry. We maybe do that inside our own businesses. People fall into it, or you're quite good at talking to people about it, but you don't often see people look outside to say, who's that person with maybe that little bit of spark that we could give the principles of adult learning to. We could build them into being able to go in front of a group of people and guide them towards an outcome. So I think that for me was a real big win and a real big confidence boost for me.
Awesome. So kind of, it's interesting you mentioned this about kind of, you kind of see on LinkedIn or wherever kind of, we need to be looking at other industries and stuff like that. And I'm the first person to shout about that, but it's interesting kind of when we get people in the interview room, so to speak, who are from other industries, how many times that gets kind of, batted down very, very quick.
Yeah.
But kind of, I'm just kind of reflecting on kind of your kind of your process and the kind of process what you went through. If you was to kind of give some advice to someone, and maybe let's pretend there's another Jack out there, and they're kind of doing the same thing, same background as you, kind of coming into the role what you're in right now. What bits of advice would you give to them based on the learnings of the journey what you went through?
Yeah, so look, I think some of the biggest ones there are do at least a little bit of homework around it. You know, you'll have heard this in the past, and a lot of other people maybe listen to this in the past. Oh, I'd love to be a trainer, because you just sort of stand up and sort of talk to me. I'd love that job. And they say, well, what is it you'd love about that job? Oh, you just work with people all day, and you sort of stand up and do this. So it's probably really understand what the role looks like. Like I said, sort of 5 hours on 2 trains yesterday, and hotel stays, and it's the print, it's the prep, it's the knowing who you're going to be in front of as well. And, you know, the amount of work that goes into just being in front of people virtually for an hour, or just being in front of people in person for a day. So go and speak to other people that are in the industry. That's my big one. And that's why I found myself getting involved in the MindChimp group. So I remember do you remember how I ended up in the group, or how I ended up invited to the group?
Probably not.
That's okay. There's a lot of people.
I wanna guess and say you kind of messaged me on LinkedIn, but I think you messaged me on. I think someone directed you, but I'm not sure. I could be getting mixed up. It was a while ago. It was like 2-3 years.
No. So I was in a ton of LinkedIn groups around learning, and everyone was just spamming for their product or send stuff. And I put a post on LinkedIn saying, can someone just get me a group or a group of like-minded people that aren't trying to sell stuff and are just talking about how to develop themselves and what's really going on in L&D. And either someone copied you into that post, or you found it and said, I'll drop you a message. I might have something that's of interest to you. So that was me going out and trying to seek that information from the industry. So that's number one. Be curious about what's out there. Number two is be honest. So I never went into any of my interviews, or my tactic all the way through trying to get a foot in the door was never, oh, I've got a bit of industry knowledge from working at the training foundation or whatever. It was, I could be your wild card. You know, I got an understanding of it. I've got a passion for it. I just haven't had the opportunity to work in-house before. And this is where my frustration with the whole process came along. People would say, oh, wow, yeah, let's take you past first interview. There's just something we like about you. And then I get to second interview and they'd say, you just haven't got the experience. And something we know. Like, that's why you took me. That's why you took me forward. You said I was the wild card. That's how I came in. But also know how people fall into these roles. So if people are ever asking for 3 to 5 years experience, you can probably be sure that sometimes the hiring manager hasn't got 3 to 5 years experience. They fell into it. They haven't got that experience as well. So sometimes what's being asked for maybe isn't as realistic as it could be. It's ideal, of course it is. I think my 2 big ones that I learnt on was obviously get out there and speak to people and really understand what it is about. It's not just spending some nice time with people. There's a hell of a lot more to it. A lot of spreadsheets as well when it comes to organising things. So if you can't get on with spreadsheets, maybe it's not the best place as well. And number 2 is know what your unique selling, and that just sounds really generic, but know what your unique selling point is to get in through that door. What would make you different to everybody that's there? What have you researched? What are those different skills that you're bringing to the floor? I know now, if I was in a place where I would want to recruit people, I'd be like, who in the past has done analytics or marketing campaigns or working around that? How could we get people involved then in creating a campaign of learning? I can teach you the learning stuff. That can be part of your development, but it's better if you've got those skills to do anyway. So yeah, they're my 2 massive things. They're what got me over the line anyway.
Cool. Okay, sound advice, I think. Sound advice. So if I was to say to you, and this can be, what I ask next doesn't have to be a learning specific, it can just be one for you, but if I was to say to you, give a gift of a book to 5 people, and maybe it's a gift where maybe it's not a gift, a gift what you think everyone should read, maybe it's one that's actually changed your perception on things, what book would you give?
So the one I'll give from a personal perspective is quite a small book. It's called Notes from a Friend by Tony Robbins. And it was a book actually probably this time last year or sometime last year. I reread it again, and it had another profound sort of impact on me. It's one of those first books that I read after doing my cognitive behavioural therapy. And it was just so powerful. And I think I gave away 5 or 6 copies to people that responded on LinkedIn. I just wanted people to have that kind of things. And maybe I have given that away to over 5 people. And interestingly, I always end up with this recency bias about the book that I've read, but I've just literally finished this morning, Hans Rosling's Factfulness. So have you ever watched any of the Hans Rosling videos on like TED or anything like that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So read his book, or the book that was released after he died. He'd been working on it with his son and his daughter-in-law, I think. And for me, it's just made me think about, actually, when we're presented with data, we're presented with facts, we're presented with a specific view, what else sits around it? What are the other angles that we need to look at? Let's not take everything at face value. So there's I think there's 10 instincts in there that it talks about, and actually there, when you read them, you catch yourself thinking, oh God, yeah, I've absolutely done that. How might that have looked differently if I'd done that? So yeah, look, if nothing for the recency perspective, Hans Rosling, Factfulness, cracking book.
Okay. So if I was to say to explain what you do to explain what you do to a 5-year-old, how would you explain that?
I would like to say, and this is where we're going to get to, I help people do their jobs better, because it could be in a multiple of different ways. But for me, that's it. Like, my purpose here is to help people do their jobs better. Simple as that. And then all the things that happen on the back of that, the business performance, the employee satisfaction, the engagement, and so on, should come as a result. But for me, it's very much about making people be able to do their job better, be able to do their job easier.
Okay, so how do we do that then? So kind of going back into this kind of L&D space right now. So how do we make people better at their jobs, Jack?
Well, the first question we ask is probably that, like, why aren't people performing, or why isn't performance where you expect it to be? And this ends up in where we end up as an industry in so many conversations about, should we be performance consultants? Should we be this? There's an element we probably just need to begin to be a bit curious and not take the first answer. And I always come back to, Andrew Jacobs wrote about shopkeeper versus engineer, and it's very much something I always come back to. When someone asks me for something within the business, or is expecting me to be reactive, why are they asking me for that? What's sitting behind that? Why aren't people performing as expected? How do we know they're not? How do we know that they will be? So for me, there's a big thing and that's where sort of that commercial mind comes in for me, having worked in a sales company, or sort of a small to medium company, where I knew the cost of the coffee coming in. I knew how much our servers were costing per month to run, and I really knew the pounds and pence of how a business ran. So when you put me in front of someone asks for something, I'm thinking, well, what is it we're trying to move? How are you trying to move performance for your team up, down, left, right, whatever it might be? So that's the big thing for me. It's very much about performance, because that's what we get measured on. That's the expectations on us.
Cool. Okay. So kind of bringing it back to you and kind of what you're doing right now. What's the biggest problem you're facing in your position at the moment? And I'm trying to kind of think, rather than it being a generic kind of business problem, actually, what's the problem?
Yeah.
What's the biggest problem what you're facing right now in and this can be in business or in career?
Yeah. So look, I think the career side of it is a very interesting one. So I think I've mentioned this I forget if I've written these things down, if I've talked to people, if I've just had a conversation in my own head sometimes. But there's no sort of obvious progression path if you want to get into learning and development. So, if you look at job specs, an L&D manager across 8 different businesses means 8 very different things. Whereas if you're a project manager going into a business, or if you're an operations manager, you kind of know what that's going to look like. So I think as a career, the problem is people end up maybe in a job for because they just don't know what that next step is, or actually where a role might sound like it's a lower level or lower responsibilities like roles. Actually, it's a great opportunity. It's doing more than what you currently are. So I think there's an industry issue with that. And that's why we have to go on and explore doing different things, and why we end up looking at things like you're involved in down human-centered design, sort of user experience design, actually having to get into those and looking at that as a progression path. From a personal perspective, or sort of a where I am now perspective, I think it's an experience and expectation imbalance or problem, however you want to call it. So for a long time, the business has run in a certain way. People come to L&D deliver training, and I'm very different to that. And I have some interesting conversations with stakeholders sometimes that have expected to come for one thing, and I've just asked them a load of questions, and they go away with a a list of things I need them to get answers to. So I think it's about how you switch to not just being this sort of stubborn consultant, but also taking people on that journey. Look, I know this is sort of what you expected. For me to help you get the most out of this, we just need to sit down and have a few questions. We just need to work out what's going to be right for you. And often what we find is it wasn't what they originally came in. That was maybe just a presenting symptom. It's what really sits behind. So I think for me, it's that whole mindset, behavior change, experience and expectation change. And what I have to remember is I'm not working for a smaller company anymore. It is turning a big ship, but you get the good feeling sometimes. Where when I first started, people, because I work out of our Birmingham office, people would come and say, I need training on X. And I say, well, what have you looked on this platform? I discover, all these areas they've got to. Oh, well, I haven't. I just sort of come to you, Jack. Whereas now people bump into the corridor and say, Jack, I had a look on. I just kind of found this, and this. How useful do you think it might be for this problem that I've got? So people are already having those different conversations with me, and that's just purely down to persistence and doing it with a smile on my face and not doing it so that people feel as if they're being pushed off or pushed away. And I think that's the important things about how you involve people in that process.
So it kind of, I was just thinking that it kind of, there's a bigger question to this, and I think, I think the bigger question is kind of, why should people get into L&D? And I guess maybe it's posing that question to you, Jack. Kind of, why should people get into L&D right this second? There's lots more of a cool industries to get into. Why do you think people should get into L&D?
So it's a massive one, isn't it? Like, no, this probably ain't going to end up on a 30-second advert, because it's going to end up a little bit longer than 30 seconds. But I think there's a few important things that I recognise now. So you read all the reports about the future of work, the future of the world, and robots, AI, fourth industrial revolution, and the little line or the lines or the paragraphs that people don't read because they're a little bit further into those reports are, people are going to be more important than ever. People are going to be more important than ever. They need a new skill set because they're not going to be doing that routine work. That knowledge work, or that the inputs that we've done on computers now are just a modern version of the piecework they used to do in factories. Back in that sort of the industrial revolution back in the 1800s. And it's that whole this for me is at a time when we're going to technically reskill an entire population of people to have to operate in a different world. So that's the exciting thing for me. The challenge with that, people don't know what that needs to look like. So I will often talk to people about, well, what does that future skill set for you need to look like? Oh, I don't know. It's probably about robots and automation. It's like, well, that might be part of it. So I think that's why I would look at getting into it now. I think I would also look at getting into it now because I think we're at that bit of a turn and that changing point. And I think, we've spent years talking about, here are the skills that L&D needs. You read towards maturity reports, and for years, it's the same skills that are coming up every single time. And I get to that point where thinking, has anybody read these or done something with it or circled it and just gone, this would be nice to do? But I think there is again, it's the idea of a changing skill set for L&D. You're not likely to spend all of your time up in front of people talking at them or taking them through things in a classroom. Actually, how are all these other ways that we can help and enable people to learn? So that's where the exciting thing for me is, and that would be my advert for anyone. This is probably the most important time, I'm going to say the human race, but goodness, that makes me sound like I'm in control of the whole human race. I think you know what I mean. Yeah, absolutely, power to the people. But yeah, that's it for me. It's an exciting time for that reason.
So kind of playing with devil's advocate here. So you kind of mentioned you see these things in the reports, and it's the same things over and over again. So I guess the branching question of that is, well, if that's been up to L&D to do, why are we still seeing these things over and over again? And actually, have we even done the job properly in the first place? And I guess a follow-up question, what I'm thinking about is, what makes L&D unique to do this now? There's other industries that can do this. There's Google. Yeah, there's kind of bad information and good information, but I think there's like that with everywhere. But kind of, if we're still addressing the same problem we was addressing 4 or 5 years ago, is L&D even needed, do you think?
It'd be interesting to see what we do if we switched it off. That'd be a really cool experiment. I think like L&D just downs tools for like 3 months and actually see what happens. And what we'd find on the back of that is actually what we should have been doing. So where the gaps and where the problems come to the top, and where we've probably been putting our energy into the wrong place. So that'd be an awesome experiment to do. Like, no one would sign it off, but it would be an awesome experiment to do. Just turn the tap off for 3 months and see what happens, because then that would really bring to the surface what we should be doing. You're absolutely right, though. Do we just continue talking? And I think people will. And I think there are people like, sorry, this is why I'm here. That's absolutely. So one of my main motivations for getting into L&D was I spent a lot of time as well at exhibitions when I worked on the sales side of things, and I would see people in this industry because they didn't care. I'm going to use that word care. I can't measure that. I don't know what they do truly care about. But you had this feeling that they were just sort of doing it because they were hidden in a corner somewhere and maybe close to retirement or earning a decent wage. If I can stop one person like that getting into the industry, we're going to be in a better place. So I think, it starts with us as individuals. We can talk as groups and do it, but actually, are you modeling those behaviors that you're talking about? I wrote a post, I can't remember, it was sort of the start of 2019, about moaning about a company, your company or wherever you are, not having a workplace learning culture. But have you surveyed your own learning culture as a professional? So I think it's about my job, if as a professional, is to begin to shine that mirror on people, I think, and begin to challenge people and say, well, what are you doing about it? And there are people, again, like Andrew Jacobs, there's everyone in the Mindset group that are very much like that, open to challenging each other. So I think you're right. I don't know where we started with that question, Danny. You just allowed me to ramble. I think there's a couple of answers in there potentially, but I think for me, you're right. How do we know if we're focused on the right things? We don't, unless we stop and sort of be honest and reflect and use what might be there to support that, because we just can't turn off the tap. It'd be wicked to try it, but yeah, no one's going to sign that off.
So it's interesting you say, how do you turn it off? Because that's literally the first question I say when someone talks to me about an LMS. I'm like, turn it off and watch how nobody screams, because nobody's ever said, oh, I can't wait to get in-house and get on my work's LMS. Nobody's ever said that.
Well, we do, because we're L&D people. We love saying that kind of stuff, surely.
Yeah. No. It's interesting. So I think, I guess my take on this is kind of, I bounce back and forth with this one, Jack, because I think L&D is valuable. Mm-hmm. I also think if I had to cut fat out my business, L&D would be the first place I'd cut it. Well, you can't see that already.
Why would you do that? Why would you cut them out? Because I think you're absolutely right, and that's why. I don't know why people always get so surprised when the rounds come around and L&D have got to lose a couple of heads again, or actually we just get rid of the whole L&D team. Why do you think that is? Why would you cut it?
I think L&D's got this knack of having a lot of fat to a team. And when I say fat, I don't mean it in like a negative, but we end up having a lot of fluff. And sometimes, but unfortunately, when head counts do happen and we get cut, it tends to be the wrong ones that get cut in the end anyway. But so the reason why I would say that, I honestly don't know how L&D have got this thing of, and I come across negative on this podcast for this reason, because it provokes conversation. For everything what I say is bad about L&D, there's lots of things what I love, probably equally if not more so. But if you want your onboarding program, we kind of think, L&D are the best. You got product designers, service designers in-house who will design a better onboarding. Yeah. It's just how it is. We talk about kind of, we need to market our content, comms and marketing. If comms and marketing can figure out a way to talk across the table, it'd be interesting. I personally put a post out there a while back, probably last week I think it was, and it was saying, if I'm wrong, tell me. If I'm right, tell me. And it was interesting how many views it got, but how many no comments it got. Because there's too many people who sit on the fences.
People are scared to put their head above the parapet. Massively, massively scared. And that's why I love, this isn't blowing smoke because I'm honest, but that's why I love the kind of thing that you're doing, and you see other people talk about it. So they're just willing to sort of stand up and say, is there a better way of doing it? Like, doesn't mean we're not useful, but is there a better way of doing it? If I'm with you, if I was a chief executive of a company, if I was having to look at whatever parts of the business, I'd be looking at the ones that don't return any value or don't have any impact on the business. So that's where that commercial sort of head comes to the fore. So if people come to me and we use the busy word, everyone's massively busy. So what's going to make you go to the top of my list is if you're going to say to me, I've got a problem here, it's causing this impact on the business, blah, blah, help me get to the root cause of the problem. Great, let's pull the people together that are going to be able to do it. And it's not L&D alone, like that's the big one as well. L&D has to come today, put its cape on and fix it. No, like when project managers run things, they don't just do it all themselves. They get the right people in to do that as well. So fundamentally, my other thing is the name of us, learning and development. It sets an expectation about what we're going to do. That's another thing as well, but it's so ensconced and so entrenched as a name. Are we going to change that anytime soon? Maybe not, but I'm with you. Like there's that ruthless and cutthroat side of me. It says, yeah, I would cut myself out of a business if I wasn't the thing that was adding value to the bottom line, or if I was having that impact. You wouldn't cut your products out of the business and keep your L&D team. They're the things that make you money, or the things that have a customer impact to them. So it's how we know that. How do we know the levers of the business to be valuable? What does that look like? And I can guarantee a lot of L&D managers out there or whatever probably haven't even asked that question of their chief financial officer. They probably don't know how their company makes money. And ultimately, that's sort of what we're there for. When you work for a business, you're there to sort of support its goals, unless it's a charity and so on, but that's still about money to go and support a specific cause. It might just be more ethical than working in a specific business. Sorry for the rant. That you got me onto a specific theme that I love talking about.
No, it's good, and I think fundamentally there's nothing more what I would love to do than create my own L&D team. But I tell you what, it wouldn't consist of many L&D people. It'd have a few in there, like I think good mentors, good coaches in there, good history, good background. Yeah. But it'd be modern background, not someone talking about a book released 10 years ago. So the reason why I say this is because I don't think we should rip it out. I think it just needs remastering. And I think actually what I am talking about more than ripping it out, I'm talking about the development journey of an L&D team needs to be focused on this. It needs to be focused on what they're doing. We talk about design thinking. That's not new to L&D. That's not new to the business. Yet to L&D, it's like the next unicorn. And it's interesting. Kind of that's how we do in L&D. And actually, the reason why I've kind of stayed ahead of what I do and kind of is because I'm looking at all these other things. And it's just a shame that. And I can't even turn around and say it's because L&D is busy, because realistically, every business, like you said, every person within that business and in that function is busy. But it'd be interesting to say to L&D, create a journey what'll put you out of a business, out of a job, and it'd be interesting to see what would come up with that.
Well, you think about. Let's use Virgin Media as an example. We're always going to be bringing out new technology about how we make it easier for our customers. The people that are creating that technology are having to learn that a bit at the forefront. They're creating a product that once it's there and it's out, that's their knowledge or the level of that. They're going to have to go on to do something else. So when we're doing that, they're already creating that kind of redundancy in there. They don't stop and go, well, that's sort of the level of what I can work at. So I'm going to have to find this same project with another company, which isn't going to exist. I think, going back to that busy thing, I think if anybody now listening to this podcast goes and speaks to whoever's in their team or other L&D teams and they say they're busy, of course you're damn busy. Everyone's busy. What are you busy with? And what impact is it having? Why are you busy with that? So, for instance, we run things like aspiring manager programs. It was something we put into the business a couple of years ago because there was nothing to support people moving from on the floor or whatever into a management role. And my next step with that, looking at that, is how do we know it's been a success? Like, how do we know if people that have been onto that end up more quickly into management roles, or how many of them get promoted into management roles? What does that mean in terms of how much we save from having to bring people from outside of the business? And they're those kind of conversations. Like, yeah, of course you're busy. What are you busy with though? And why are you busy with it is probably an even more important question. Why are you busy with that? Is it because you're taking it on, or because it's really going to have an impact on what the business does when those conversations come around. Like if you read financial statements of companies, I do that every quarter for Virgin Media and Liberty Global, because that's just me. But you never see in there revenue rose because of blah, 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 and a performance change that we made in the business. It's always we sold more products or whatever. But wouldn't that be great if it got to a point where, a company is turning around in their financial statements and saying revenue went up 3% this month, due to increased spend from customers because of a specific performance training program that was put into place? How good would that be? That would be that whole, actually, that's just really making a difference. Maybe I've just set myself a massive goal at some point to get L&D into a financial statement, but it might be out there, and I'd love someone to show me an example of it, because that would be a sort of ringing endorsement of what I think we should be doing.
Well, I think you need to go one layer down first, Jack, and that I think you need to go a bit like how you get your council tax. You have a look at your council tax and it says 50% of this went on, fire service, 50% of this went on, and actually kind of once you start putting the percentages on and kind of saying 50% of this went on, that's kind of X, 50% of this went on X, I mean, that's when you can start going, okay, well, that's leadership and that's this, and you start making it a bit more accountable. But I guess kind of moving on from this and talking about, obviously, you mentioned you've read, I think, was it 52 or 53 books?
53, yeah. I managed to squeeze another one in just before the end of last year.
Beautiful. I love it. So what's your biggest hack? And when I say hack, I mean like an 80-20 hack. So you know what 80-20 is, right? Or do you want me to quickly go through it? Kind of.
No, the whole Pareto's law thing. So what is that 20% you do that actually counts for 80% of the impact?
Spot on. So kind of this can be your personal or professional life again, but kind of what's your biggest 80-20?
Yeah, so from the reading one, so I can tell you what that was. It was learning to, or getting the basics of speed reading. So that was the first one for me. But there's the other 80-20 that I have with that is that before I even read a book, I'll see how many pages are in a chapter, what that's going to mean, where I can fit that in, and try and plan that over the next sort of week or so. It only takes sort of 5 minutes to do, but that's that whole, where am I going to get a chance to read it? What's my motivation to do it? Because if you put a 300-page book in front of me, like, no, thank you. But if you put 10 chapters of 30 pages, that's another one as well. So mindset was a big one for me. With that. The other 80-20 hack, and it was my last year, it was like, just say yes, because that's where you're going to have your experiences. So not say yes to absolutely everything, because then that's where you end up busy, but say yes to more things. That was my 20% that's had the 80% of impact. Yes, I'll go and put that application in for the sponsored learning professional. Great, done that. Yes, I'll take on the graduate development program within Virgin Media. Great, I'm stood up on a stage emceeing one of the days. That would have never happened. Say yes to having the chief financial officer on one of your courses. They're the kind of things. So I think just say yes is a 80-20 hack for me.
Okay. So kind of, who's a free? No, let's do 5. Who's the 5 people you recommend everybody should be following?
I recommend everyone should be following. Oh, you're going to make me do this now. So, one person I think people should definitely follow, Gary Vaynerchuk. Do you know Gary Vaynerchuk? Yeah. The kind of stuff that he... Yeah. So Gary Vaynerchuk, I think more just because he cuts through the rubbish. Yes, he's a bit blue. He's a bit sweary at times. If you can get through that, that's absolutely fine. But I think he cuts through a lot of the rubbish and the excuses that people go through. And I'll go and have a quick look at one of his quotes and just go, yeah, I'm doing exactly that. Let's just change the mindset around that. You've got me having a look into my social now. You got me distracted. I end up trying to see who's signed for Coventry or something in the meantime. Andrew Jacobs, I think, is one, because he's got into the habit now of posting a small short post every single day. If you sign up to his Twitter or his LinkedIn, I think that's always an interesting one. I think suck Pabio, because it's not just all one thing. Just reminds me that life isn't just the job that you're doing, and there are other things to remember. I think that's a really interesting one. They're my three nailed on ones. If I come up with the other two, I'll jump in at some point as we're going, as we remember. I'd say follow me, but you're probably just going to get a load of retweets of either Cats or Coventry City News and the occasional thing about L&D. So if that's your niche, me, absolutely.
I feel like you've just set your own little niche of kind of, yeah, I'm not even going where my imagination went there. So kind of, okay, here's a question for you, and I want you to have a quick think about this one.
Yeah.
Do you even like yourself?
No, because I think likes a bit of a sort of, for me, when you like something, are you really there? There are times that I oscillate between loving myself and what I do, and that's not from an egotistical perspective. That's how I have managed my self-confidence in the past, to being content, to being, do you know what, you did your best today, that you turned up, you showed up, you did what you did. So no, I don't like myself. I oscillate between loving myself and being content with myself. Okay,
so I guess this is kind of coming back to the social media and kind of giving you a bit more time to think about it. But when it comes to social media, do you think, well, it's a two-pronged question, really. Do you think social media is a net positive or a net negative for society? And what's your take on L&D's presence on social media?
So I have sort of Gary Vaynerchuk's approach to this on the impact of social. Like, it only sort of shows up what you've been following or what you have been liking or what you've been. The algorithms are designed to show you more of what you've been following or liking or engaging with. So it's a net positive. If you focus on looking at things that are net positive, it becomes a net negative where you're focusing on things or content or conversations of things that are net negative. So you choose who you follow, you choose who you connect with, you choose all these things. The majority of the time, of course, there are things. So I think that's driven by us. I think a lot of people will say, oh God, isn't social media terrible? Well, only if you look at the terrible things and if you look at the bad things there. If you read Factfulness by Hans Rosling, he talks about no one ever, you never see in the news, meteorologist got weather report right today. Like, you only hear about when the most famous one, Michael Fish, got it completely wrong. Like, so we're sort of hardwired to put those things out there anyway. So that would be sort of my thesis on that. L&D's role?
Not its role, but kind of like, what do you think its presence is in L&D, and maybe it's kind of what you see from people within L&D?
So where I've got the massive value from a professional perspective is that ability to connect with a lot of people that are all over the place. So maybe in the past, people will have had to work on local networks or go to like a CIPD branch meeting. And look, the fact that we're having these conversations, the fact that we can have conversations with people all over the world, I think is a great thing from like a professional development perspective. Leveraging it, I don't know. I don't do enough with it. I bet there are people out there doing some fantastic things with it. I think if you look at David Bedlow, so I'll just do a quick look at where he is on Twitter. I must have a lot of Davids. Let me have a quick look. Yes, MAB_D Bedlow. So he's a head of learning development at the Mortgage Advice Bureau, and they do a lot around how they use theirs to promote learning internally. I think they've got sort of back channels that they operate with as well. But again, if you look at, I think a lot of their people that are involved in L&D, they all have at MAB_ at the start of what they do. So they have this sort of presence that people are used to begin to see again, because they're probably all across the country. I'm trying to think who else did something. I think University of Manchester for a while did something along those lines. I followed like University of Manchester personal development for a while to see what they were doing with it. So look, there might be some other great examples. And what I'd love is if people on the back of this say, yeah, actually, these are the kind of things that we're doing with it. That's what people spend a lot of time on. Are we leveraging it enough in a certain way? I don't know. I don't know.
Okay. So, kind of going a bit full circle now and kind of coming to the end here, Jack. But, you know, we're kind of like, we're the first people to say, you know, we never stop growing and we never stop kind of, you know, developing. So if I was to say, ask you that question again now, like where you are now, Jack, what do you want to be when you grow older? What would you say?
Happy in whatever I'm doing. So I am not even going to try and predict the future, because that is quite a difficult thing. I just want to be happy, whatever that looks like. And I still haven't decided what happiness looks like yet. So that's my answer. If it's a real answer.
Okay. No, it's as real as it is to you. You know, that's kind of a thing, right? It's about what you want to be and not nobody else.
Yeah.
So I guess kind of at the start of the show, we asked you for 4 numbers. So your numbers are tallied to a random list of items on my phone. And your items are a candle, let me have a look. So we had let's have a little candle. Then you had some toothpaste,
Nice.
some deodorant, and the last one was a sponge. Very select items, actually. But you're on a desert island, Jack. What are you doing with these things other than kind of staying, you know, fresh? What are you doing with them?
So I would use the deodorant and the candle to start a fire. So I'd fire that deodorant through the candle. Don't ask me how it's going to be lit, because I've sorted that one out. It's probably from the sun or something. So yeah, let's not unravel that one too much. Toothpaste would be, I think that'd be my food. That would have to be, and a sponge. How big's a sponge?
Your standard sponge. What's in the shower, maybe. Nice try. I like that.
Yeah, I was gonna sort of float away on the sponge or something like that. I think that'd have to be my little mate. Maybe I'm ripping off Castaway a little bit here, but I think that would end up being my mate. You had SpongeBob SquarePants, so that's probably the closest I'm going to get to having a bit of friendship on the island.
Fair enough. So, Jack, where can people keep up to date with what you're up to and what you're kind of working on?
Yeah, so LinkedIn is one. Just search for Jack Lockhart on there, across Instagram, across Twitter, and across, I think I've ended up with 2 Facebook profiles, like a personal one and like a professional page, but you'll find me at any of them /Jack A Lockhart. And also, because I threw myself in the deep end with this, I think after a drink after Christmas, jacklockhart.co.uk. So that's where I sort of blog from semi-regularly. I'm hoping to get that up to a little bit more regular, and then that ends up posting out of there. That's the best place to get me. If you ever see me in real life, just tap me on the shoulder and have a conversation. That's absolutely what I love to do.
Awesome. I love it. Jack, thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you, mate. Appreciate it.
Enjoy the rest of the evening, Jack.
And you.
Cheers. Bye-bye.